Lena sat in the cold hospital hallway, her hands shaking as she held the brown envelope that carried her test results. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it echoing in her ears. Mark, her husband, stood beside her, leaning on the wall with his phone in hand. He didn't look up once, not even to meet her eyes. The doctor came out, holding a file. His face was calm but serious. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said softly, "the results show that you're having trouble conceiving. It may take some time and medical support, but..." Lena didn't hear the rest. The words "trouble conceiving" kept ringing in her head. She blinked fast, trying to stay calm, but her vision blurred. She turned slowly to Mark, hoping for comfort, a hand to hold, a word to assure her. But he just stood there, frozen, expression blank. Before she could say anything, the door swung open again. Mrs. Reynolds, Mark's mother, marched into the hallway. Her face was hard and her voice sharp. "I knew it," she shouted. "I knew something was wrong with this girl. You're cursed, Lena. I warned my son." Lena's throat tightened. "Please, Ma," she started, but Mrs. Reynolds cut her off. "Don't call me that," she snapped. "You came into this family to destroy it. You trapped my son with your tricks, and now you can't even give him a child." People turned to look. Nurses glanced over. The humiliation burned Lena's skin. She looked to Mark again, praying he'd stop his mother, say something, anything. But he said nothing. He just stared at the floor, silent, as if she wasn't even there. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't want to cry in public, but her chest hurt too much to hold it in. The doctor tried to calm things down, but Mrs. Reynolds brushed him off and stormed out, muttering under her breath. That night, the whispers began. From the open window, Lena could hear Mrs. Reynolds outside, talking to neighbors. "I told Mark not to marry her," she said loudly. "She used dark powers to tie him down. That's why he can't see clearly. It's a spiritual problem." Lena sat on the edge of her bed, hugging her pillow, listening. Every word felt like a knife. Mark sat across the room, silent again, pretending to scroll through his phone. She wanted to scream, to tell him to stop her mother-in-law, to defend her. But no sound came out. Her lips trembled, and in that quiet room filled with unspoken pain, she made a decision. She would stay silent, at least for now, because deep inside, something in Lena shifted that night. A small, quiet spark that promised her silence wouldn't last forever. He promised, "We'll build a family no matter what." Lena smiled when he said those words. It was late evening, and they were sitting on a park bench, watching the sun fade behind the trees. Mark held her hand tightly, his eyes full of warmth and hope. At that time, she believed every word. He was kind, funny, and full of dreams just like her. They talked about children, a small house filled with laughter, and how they would face everything together. Back then, life seemed simple. Lena had grown up in a modest home. Her parents were not rich, but they taught her to work hard and stay honest. She studied business administration while working part-time jobs to pay her school fees. She had learned early how to take care of herself and how to be strong even when life felt unfair. Mark came from a different world. His family was wealthy, proud, and cared deeply about their reputation. When Lena first met his mother, Mrs. Reynolds, she tried her best to make a good impression. She dressed neatly, brought flowers, and spoke with respect. But Mrs. Reynolds only gave her a stiff smile and said, "So you're the one my son has been talking about." Her tone was polite but cold. Lena tried not to take it to heart. She told herself that love would win his mother over. After all, Mark seemed sure. He told her not to worry. "Mom will come around," he said. "She just needs time." They got married a year later. The wedding was beautiful but tense. Lena noticed the disapproving looks from some of Mark's relatives. During the reception, she overheard someone whisper, "She's not their kind. She's too ordinary." It hurt, but she smiled through it. She wanted to believe that once they started their new life together, things would get better. For a while it did. Their first months as husband and wife were filled with laughter, late-night talks, and gentle promises. They dreamed about traveling, buying a house, and having children. But as months turned into years and no baby came, everything started to change. It began with little comments. Mrs. Reynolds would say things like, "Maybe you should rest less and pray more." Or, "Some women have strong wombs, others just need cleansing." She would say these things during family dinners, loud enough for everyone to hear, pretending to be concerned. Sometimes, She would hold Lena's hands and say, "I'm praying for you, dear. Fruitfulness is a gift from God, but maybe there's something spiritual blocking it." Then she'd sigh deeply as if Lena had disappointed her personally. Each word dug deeper into Lena's heart. Mark tried at first to protect her. He told his mother to stop talking that way. But over time his voice grew quieter. He began spending more time at work, coming home late, sometimes smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. When Lena asked, he said she was imagining things. She wanted to believe him. She loved him too much to think otherwise. But she noticed the changes, how he no longer looked at her the same way, how he avoided her touch, how he kept his phone face down on the table. Mrs. Reynolds' presence became stronger in their lives. She visited often, uninvited, and took over everything, the kitchen, the living room, even how Lena arranged the house. She would say things like, "You're still new to being a wife. Let me show you how it's done." Lena smiled and kept quiet, even when it hurt. At night, when Mark finally came home, she would try to talk about their future. "Maybe we should see another doctor," she'd say softly. "Maybe there's still hope." Mark would sigh and roll away from her. "You're stressing me, Lena," he'd say. "Just stop talking about it." But she couldn't stop thinking about it. Every month that passed felt like a reminder that she was failing. She prayed, cried quietly in the bathroom, and tried every suggestion she could find, diets, herbs, even old family remedies. Nothing worked. Still she held on. She believed that the man who once promised to build a family with her still existed somewhere inside the distant husband sleeping next to her. She believed that one day, Mrs. Reynolds would stop seeing her as an outsider. And she believed that love, the same love that brought them together, would be enough to fix what was broken. But deep inside, a small voice whispered that something darker was forming around her, something she could not yet see. And she had no idea how much her quiet endurance was about to be tested. Lena overheard Mrs. Reynolds one afternoon while walking past the living room. Her mother-in-law was on the phone, speaking in a low but angry voice. "I told you Mark deserves a real woman, one who can give him an heir," she said. "This one is just taking up space." I knew she would be trouble. Lena froze by the door. The words hit her like a slap. Her heart thudded loudly as she pressed her hand against her chest. She wanted to walk in and say something, but her voice refused to come out. She quietly stepped back and went to her room, feeling like her world had just tilted. That night, she sat beside Mark during dinner, watching his face. He looked tired and distracted, scrolling through his phone between bites. She wondered if he knew what his mother had said, or worse, if he agreed with her. A few days later, the whispers began again. Lena noticed how some of the neighbors looked at her strangely. When she went to buy vegetables at the corner shop, the woman selling them smiled awkwardly and said, "We've been praying for you. I hope God will deliver you soon." "Deliver me?" Lena asked, confused. The woman's eyes darted away. "You know, people are saying things," she mumbled. "What things?" The woman looked uncomfortable. "They said you used charms to make Mark marry you. That you bewitched him. That's why he doesn't smile anymore." Lena's mouth went dry. She wanted to shout, to defend herself, but the words stuck in her throat. She simply paid for her vegetables and walked away quickly, her eyes stinging with tears. On Sunday, she went to church hoping to find peace. She dressed neatly, tied her scarf carefully, and prayed silently for strength. But when she entered the church, she felt the stares again. People whispered. A woman who used to sit beside her shifted away and moved to another seat. It felt like the ground was opening under her feet. After the service, she tried to talk to Mark. They were walking to the car when she said softly, "Mark, people are saying terrible things about me. That I used charms on you. Your mother." Mark stopped walking. "Lena, please," he said sharply. "Not here." She swallowed hard. "Why are you angry? I didn't do anything wrong." He turned to face her, eyes cold. "You've embarrassed my family. Do you think I don't hear what people are saying? You walk around looking sad, making everyone think there's something wrong in this house." Tears filled her eyes. "So, it's my fault people are lying about me?" Mark looked away. "Just stop drawing attention to yourself." He got into the car, leaving her standing there for a few seconds before she followed silently. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the ticking clock. Her heart felt heavy. She reached over to touch Mark's hand, but he turned away, pretending to be asleep. The next morning, while making the bed, she noticed something shiny near Mark's pillow. It was a small gold earring, elegant, with a tiny red stone. Definitely not hers. She picked it up slowly, her hands trembling. Her breath caught in her throat. When Mark came out of the bathroom, she showed it to him. "Whose is this?" she asked quietly. He barely looked at it. "Oh, that? It must belong to my cousin. She visited last week, remember?" Lena frowned. "Your cousin? I washed these sheets yesterday." Mark gave her a quick, hard look. "Are you accusing me of something now?" She shook her head, tears building again. "No, I just..." "Then drop it," he said sharply, walking past her. Lena stood there, the earring still in her hand. The room felt smaller, the air heavy. She looked at the shiny little thing and realized something deep inside her was breaking. She didn't know what was true anymore, her husband's words, his mother's whispers, or the rumors outside. But one thing was clear. The trust she once held onto so tightly was slipping away, piece by piece. And in that quiet room, she felt the first seed of betrayal take root. Mark started sleeping out more often. He would leave home early, come back late, and sometimes not at all. Whenever Lena asked where he had been, he simply said, "Work ran late," or "I needed space." His voice was cold, distant, like she was no longer his wife, just someone sharing the same house. Then one morning, Mrs. Reynolds arrived with 2 suitcases. "I'm moving in for a while," she said firmly. "My son needs prayers. Something has covered his glory, and I won't sit back and watch." Lena forced a weak smile. "You don't need to worry, Ma. We're fine." Mrs. Reynolds gave her a sharp look. "Fine. You think a man who doesn't have a child after 4 years is fine? No. There's a spiritual attack here." Before Lena could respond, Mrs. Reynolds had already started unpacking her things, filling the guest room with clothes, bottles of anointing oil, and old prayer books. By evening, she was burning incense in the living room and sprinkling salt around the house. "I'm cleansing this home," she said. "Whatever spirit of barrenness is here will flee." From that day, Lena's life changed completely. Mrs. Reynolds took over the kitchen, saying Lena's food didn't have enough spiritual purity. She began cooking for Mark herself, serving him at the table with a proud smile. "A mother's food carries blessing," she would say loudly. Lena tried to stay calm. She kept cleaning, cooking her own small meals, and keeping to herself. But the insults came daily, sometimes softly, sometimes sharp like knives. "You're lucky my son still keeps you in this house," Mrs. Reynolds would say. "If it were another man, you'd be gone by now." One afternoon, when Mark came home, Lena tried to talk to him quietly. "Mark, this is our home. Your mother can visit, but she's taking over everything. I feel..." Mark cut her off. "Don't start again, Lena. She's here for my peace of mind. You should be grateful she cares enough to help." He didn't even look at her when he said it. That night, Lena cried silently under her pillow. She felt like a stranger in her own home. Still, somewhere deep inside her heart, a small voice told her not to give up. She decided to take matters into her own hands. A week later, she went alone to another fertility specialist. She didn't tell Mark or Mrs. Reynolds. After running a few tests, the doctor smiled kindly and said, "Your case isn't hopeless, Mrs. Reynolds. You can conceive with the right treatment. It'll take time, but it's possible." For the first time in months, Lena felt light again. She thanked the doctor and left the hospital with hope in her heart. She carried the medical papers carefully in her purse like a treasure. That night, she hid them inside her wardrobe drawer. But hope doesn't always last long in a house filled with darkness. The next morning, while she was hanging laundry outside, she noticed smoke coming from the kitchen. She ran in and found Mrs. Reynolds standing over the stove, burning a small pile of papers. "Ma, what are you doing?" Lena shouted. Mrs. Reynolds turned slowly, holding a burnt corner of Lena's medical papers. "These," she said, "were lies from doctors. God decides who becomes a mother, not them." Lena's heart dropped. "Those were my test results. You had no right." Mrs. Reynolds looked her straight in the eye. "I had every right. You've been running behind my son's back, seeking help from worldly people. That's why God hasn't answered you." Mark came in, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on here?" His mother quickly spoke first. "She's been visiting strange doctors, trying to use treatments to force a pregnancy." I caught her hiding it. Mark frowned. Is that true? Lena tried to explain. It wasn't like that, Mark, the doctor said. But Mark raised his hand to stop her. I told you to stop stressing about this. Why can't you ever listen? Tears filled her eyes. I just wanted to make things better. He turned away. You're making things worse. That night, Lena lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her chest tight with pain. Something deep inside her began to break. She realized her husband no longer believed in her. Maybe he never did. And his mother was slowly erasing her from her own home. The next morning, she began writing everything down. Every cruel word, every argument, every bill, every text message. She didn't know why, but something inside told her that one day, she would need the truth. Weeks passed, and things grew worse. Mark started avoiding her completely. He ate his meals with his mother and slept in the guest room, to focus on prayer. When he did speak to her, it was only to criticize her cooking, her clothes, her silence. One night, while going to get water, Lena stopped by his door. She heard voices, Mark's and his mother's. She deserves to know the truth, Mark whispered. No, Mrs. Reynolds replied quickly. If she finds out, she'll ruin everything. You must keep quiet until we're ready. Lena's heart stopped. She pressed her ear closer, but they lowered their voices. All she could catch was Mark's final words before the room went silent. I can't keep this secret forever. Lena stood frozen in the dark hallway, her heart pounding. What secret? What were they hiding from her? She stepped back quietly, her knees shaking. She wanted to run inside and demand answers, but fear held her still. Instead, she returned to her room and sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor until sunrise. Something terrible was happening, something she didn't yet understand. But one thing was certain. The man who once promised to build a family with her was no longer the same. And the home that once held love had turned into a house of secrets. Lena's world shattered the day she found out that Mark's mistress, Tara, was pregnant. She sat on the edge of the bed, numb, staring at the message on Mark's phone. It wasn't even hidden. A picture of Tara's baby bump and the caption, "Our blessing is growing." For a long moment, Lena couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled as she put the phone down. Every memory of their love, every promise he ever made, flashed before her eyes, and turned to dust. When she confronted him, Mark didn't deny it. He just said coldly, "It happened. She's carrying my child. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." Her knees weakened. "You're sorry," she whispered. "After everything we've been through?" He didn't answer. He simply walked out of the room, leaving her in silence. The next day, the news spread like wildfire. Mrs. Reynolds was the one who told everyone. She went around saying, "God has finally blessed our family through Tara. She's the true blessing we've been waiting for." Neighbors congratulated her. People stopped calling Lena Mrs. Reynolds and started referring to Tara as Mark's real wife. Then came the online posts. Someone leaked the story, twisting it into lies. They called Lena a barren witch who had cursed her husband and blocked his blessings. Her pictures were shared online with cruel comments. Lena sat alone in her living room, scrolling through the hate messages. Some told her to set Mark free. Others said she deserved the pain. Her heart broke, but this time she didn't cry. She was done crying. Days turned into weeks, and the baby was born. Mark's family threw a small celebration. Pictures of Tara holding the baby filled social media. Mrs. Reynolds proudly posted, "Our long-awaited grandchild has arrived." Lena stayed quiet, until one morning, she walked into the Reynolds family gathering, calm but determined. "I want a DNA test," she said firmly. Everyone froze. Mrs. Reynolds frowned. "Excuse me?" "I said I want a DNA test," Lena repeated. "If the child truly belongs to Mark, let the truth prove it." Tara's face turned pale. Mark's jaw tightened. "Lena, this is not necessary," he said. "It's very necessary," Lena replied, her voice steady. "You've all called me cursed. You've shamed me in public. Now let's see the truth in the open." Mrs. Reynolds gave a mocking smile. "You're just bitter, Lena. God has replaced you." But Lena didn't back down. She crossed her arms and stared at them. "If you have nothing to hide, then do the test." After much pressure, the family agreed. Weeks later, the results came back. Everyone gathered in the living room. Mark, Tara, Mrs. Reynolds, and a few relatives. The air was thick with tension. The doctor handed the envelope to Mark. He opened it slowly, his hands shaking. His eyes moved over the paper, and suddenly his face went white. Mrs. Reynolds grabbed the document. "What does it say?" she demanded. Then she froze. Her mouth dropped open, words refusing to come out. Tara started crying quietly, looking down at the floor. "The baby," Mark whispered, his voice breaking. "The baby isn't mine." The room fell silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Mrs. Reynolds finally stammered, "That's not possible. There must be a mistake." The doctor shook his head. "No mistake. The test is clear." Tara covered her face and sobbed. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Lena stood still, watching her. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "Why did you lie?" Tara wiped her tears. "He stopped talking to me months ago. I thought if I told him I was pregnant, he'd come back. I just wanted his attention, and his help. I didn't think it would go this far." Mark sank into a chair, his face pale with shock and shame. Mrs. Reynolds stared blankly at the wall, unable to speak. For the first time in years, the room was quiet, completely quiet. Lena looked around at all of them. The same people who had called her cursed, who had humiliated her, who had destroyed her peace, but she didn't feel anger anymore. No tears came. No pain. Just peace, cold, steady peace. Without a word, she picked up her purse and walked to the door. "Lena," Mark said softly, standing up. "Wait." She turned slightly, her face calm. "No, Mark. You wait. You should sit with the truth you helped create." Then she walked out, leaving them in silence. For the first time, she didn't look back. Lena filed for divorce quietly and moved out of the house without telling anyone. She packed only her clothes, her documents, and a few small things that mattered to her. There were no fights, no shouting, no final goodbyes. She simply left. Her new apartment was small but peaceful. For the first time in years, she could sleep without fear of waking up to insults or cold silence. She sat by the window each morning, sipping tea and watching the sunrise. It felt strange at first, being alone, but slowly it began to feel like freedom. News of the DNA test spread everywhere. The same internet that once called her a barren witch now stood behind her. People shared her story with messages like, "She was treated so unfairly," and "Lena's strength is inspiring." Women from all over sent her messages, thanking her for showing that silence doesn't mean weakness. Some said her story gave them courage to walk away from toxic marriages. Mark's life began to crumble. His company faced backlash, and many of his clients pulled away. Friends stopped visiting, and the media labeled him the man who betrayed his wife for a lie. Mrs. Reynolds disappeared from public life. She stopped attending church, stopped visiting neighbors, and no longer posted her proud messages online. The same people who used to praise her now whispered behind her back. Lena didn't celebrate their downfall. She didn't need revenge anymore. She just wanted peace. She found a new job at a women's foundation, a small organization that helped women who had faced family abuse and betrayal. Her calm nature and kind heart made her a perfect counselor. Many women cried in her office, sharing their pain, and Lena listened with deep understanding. One woman asked her, "How did you survive all that?" Lena smiled gently. "By remembering who I am," she said. "And by learning that silence isn't weakness, it's preparation." Each day Lena grew stronger. She took long walks, started painting again, and even began writing her story. She laughed more often and surrounded herself with kind people who saw her worth. One afternoon, she visited the hospital where her pain had started, the same hallway where she once sat trembling with her test results in hand. But this time, she walked with her head held high. She wasn't the same woman anymore. The shame, the loneliness, and the fear had all been replaced by quiet confidence. As she left the hospital, a reporter who had once written lies about her recognized her and asked for a comment. Lena smiled and said simply, "I don't live in the past anymore. I live in peace." And with that she walked away free, strong, and unbroken. One evening, Lena sat by her window, reading a book, when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. "I'm sorry," it read. "I should have defended you." She stared at the words for a long time. Her chest tightened a little, not from pain, but from memories of the woman she once was, sitting in silence, waiting for love that never came. For a moment, Her fingers moved across the keyboard. She typed, "It's too late, Mark. You broke something that can't be fixed." But then she stopped. She looked at the message again, took a deep breath, and slowly deleted it. There was nothing left to say. The past didn't need answers anymore. Lena set the phone aside and stood in front of the mirror. The soft evening light touched her face. She saw herself clearly. No longer the scared woman who once cried in secret, but someone stronger, wiser, and at peace. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears but with quiet pride. She smiled faintly at her reflection, whispering to herself, "The day they called me cursed was the day they revealed their own sins. And I never needed a child to prove I could create something. I created my peace." Outside, the world continued as usual, cars passing, children laughing, life moving on. But inside that small apartment, Lena felt something powerful: freedom. For the first time in years, her heart was light. She no longer carried anger or sorrow. Just peace, pure and steady. She turned away from the mirror, picked up her tea, and stepped out onto her balcony. The night air was cool, the sky wide and calm. Lena closed her eyes, smiled again, and let the quiet fill her soul. Her story wasn't about loss anymore. It was about becoming whole. Hi besties. Two Hearts, thanks so much for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. See you in the next one. Bye. Waving hand sparkles.